Hello there. Welcome to Economics N5. We've got a question that we want to look at here. It's a question from June 2023. It is a question on multiple choice questions. I will read through what is required in terms of the question. The question reads, the various options are given as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the answer and write only letters A to D next to the question number. That is 1.1 to 1.25. So we have got 25 questions under this question one. And then we are going to write the responses are supposed to be written in the answer book. But here we are just going to indicate which one is the correct answer from the options that we are given in this multiple choice questions. Right, we'll look at the first question. The first question is saying what is meant by derived demand. So basically, derived demand on its own refers to that the demand of a certain product depends on a certain product. So that's the basic explanation in terms of derived demand. The demand of a product is derived from the demand of another product. So let's go through the responses and try to see which response fits that explanation. So we go to A, it is demand derived from tests. Right, this is automatically out because the demand is depending on tests. We are looking at demand depending on another product. So let's look at B. It is demand derived from the price elasticity of demand. So we are seeing again this factor being relied on here is the price elasticity of demand. So this one is out also. We go to C. It is demand derived in the beginning economic classes. So this one is out again. Let's go to D. The demand for a resource is derived from what is produced. So here we are seeing that we have got a product, the demand of a certain good that is depending on a certain good again. What is being produced is another product that is being another product or good that is there. So we see now D becomes the most appropriate. So D for the first question. Then we go to the next question. If you go to the next question, the next question reads, to decide on the quantity of effect of production to hire, a company compares the dash. Remember, the factors of production that we have got are different examples of factors of production. We can have length as a factor of production, labor is a factor of production, capital. To summarize them, those are the factors of production that we have. So the question is to decide on the quantity of a factor of production to hire. A company compares the, right, when we are deciding which quantity of labor, quantity of capital we should hire or we should employ, what should we compare? So basically we are going to compare the cost of that factor of production and what it is going to give us as output after employing that factor of production. So if you go through the responses, you would see that a comparison that is there between the cost and the output of that is being that is going to come out of the cost of that factor of production. We are going to see that B is the most appropriate there. B is saying the factor price to the value of the marginal product. So if we analyze the factor price, that is the cost of that factor of production. If it's labor, we're talking about maybe the wages or the salaries that we are going to pay for that labor, and then we compare those salaries and wages to what in average worker is producing. So marginal product basically is the output that we are going to have after an additional unit has been added. That is marginal. So whenever there's an additional unit that has been added, then we look at the output that will come out from that additional unit, which is 1 unit. Then we say it's marginal product. So if we compare the two, it will help us decide on the quantity of effect of production to hire. So B becomes the most appropriate. Then we go to the next one. The next one is 1.3. So if you look at 1.3, 1.3 is saying the strongest argument for an independent reserve bank rests on the view that subjecting the reserve bank to more political pressure would impart bias to the monetary policy. So an independent reserve bank, basically, let's start by us looking at an independent here, an independent reserve bank. Independent reserve bank means a reserve bank that makes its own decisions without any interference from different parties in the economy. So the question is, the strongest argument for an independent reserve bank rests on the view that subjecting the reserve bank to more political pressure would impart just bias to the monetary policy. So you would see that if that happens, when we have more political pressure being employed, you would see that at the end of the day, we are going to notice an increase in prices. Basically, if you look at our responses that we have, we've got a disinflationary bias. When we have a disinflationary bias, we are going to have an increase in the general level of prices in the economy, but they will be increasing at a slower rate. That's disinflationary bias. Then inflationary, we have an increase in prices, but increasing at a faster rate or at a quicker rate. That's an inflationary bias. Then we've got a counter-cyclical bias. A counter-cyclical bias is any factor that is going to cause a negative effect in the economy. Let's take, for example, unemployment can cause a negative effect in the economy. So that's a counter-cyclical bias. Then we have got a deflationary bias. When we've got a deflationary bias, it means at the end of the day, we are going to see a decline or a decrease in the general price levels. So basically, the most appropriate there becomes an inflationary bias. So B is our response for 1.3. Then we go to the next one, that is 1.4. So if you go to 1.4, 1.4 is the critics of the current system of the Reserve Bank's independence contend that. So this one is asking us to see to point out the let's go through the question again. The critics of the current system of the Reserve Bank's independence contend that. So basically, we are going to look at a response which is going to bring out a critique in terms of the current system of the bank's independence. So if you go to the first one, it's saying voters have too much say about the monetary policy, which is not true. Then we go to the second one. The current system is undemocratic, which can be true according to the current economic system that we have when we are considering the Reserve Bank. So we might leave B. So want to see if we have got a more appropriate answer that we have beneath that. Then C, the president has too much control over the monetary policy on a day-to-day basis, which is not a practical response. We cannot take it as a critique because the president cannot have control over the monetary policy. The president is part of the government and they do not control the monetary policy, but the government controls the fiscal policy. So this one is not applicable in terms of this question. So we go again to the next one, which is D. The board of governors is held responsible for policy misstep. This cannot be a critique because this is actually coming in the form of accountability of what is transpiring, maybe be it at the central bank. So it cannot come as a critic. So the most appropriate answer there becomes B. So let's take B as the most appropriate answer on 1.4. Then we go to the next one. We are now on 1.5. Let's try to go through 1.5. 1.5 is saying the dash is the central bank. Sorry, the dash is the central bank, which is generally regarded as the most independent in the world because its charter cannot be changed by legislation. So this question comes in the form of being what is what is the facts according to the current world position in terms of a central bank which is generally regarded as the most independent in the world. So you would see that the European Central Bank is the most appropriate there, which is the central bank which is generally regarded as the most independent in the world because its charter cannot be changed by legislation. So the European Central Bank becomes the most appropriate there. So we are going to mark C as our answer. Then we go to the next one. Which is so it means that 1.5 is the last one that we have on this page. Then we go to the next page. We go to 1.6. The three players in the money supply process are the banks, and we have got different responses that we have. Maybe we might start by understanding what we mean by the money supply. Because here the question is asking us to identify three players in the money supply. So we would want to understand what is actually the meaning of money supply. Money supply basically is the money that is circulating in the economy, money that is in the hands of the public. Determines money supply. So when we have more money being injected in the circulation in the public from the financial institutions into the public, we are saying there is an increase in money supply. But when the opposite is happening, like the money is being taken from the public and the financial institutions or the banks or the central bank are holding a larger proportion of the money, we say now the money supply is being decreased. So what now determines the money that is being held by the public is what is being asked there. These are the players that are the three players in the money supply process, right? We have the banks being one of the players, which is correct, because the banks, they are the ones who determine the money that is going to go into the circulation. So let's go item by item in terms of the options that we have. The borrowers cannot determine the money that's circulating in the economy because they cannot control that money. The money can only be controlled from the point of view of those that can issue that money into the public. So the borrowers are the public, so they cannot determine. This one actually becomes out A. Then we go to B. Depositors. Yes, depositors can determine money supply because when depositors go and deposit their money, that is the same money that's going to be issued by the financial institutions or the banks as loans. So when the loans are issued, we say when more loans are issued, we say money supply is being increased. So depositors, yes, can also determine that, but borrowers is out, so B becomes out also. Then we go to C. C is saying depositors, yes, and the central bank, yes, the central bank. Remember, the central bank and the banks are two different parties because the central bank is the banker to all banks. So, and then the banks now depends, they fall under the central bank, or they go under the supervision of the central bank. So, C is correct. C is correct. So we go to D. Depositors, yes. And the South African Treasury, the Treasury is not responsible for controlling money supply. So D is out, so we are left with C. So C is the most appropriate that we have there. Then we move on to the next one, 1.7. The monetary liabilities of the Reserve Bank include, right? So let's start by understanding what we mean by the monetary liabilities. Monetary liabilities, basically what we are saying is, according to the question, it's saying the monetary liabilities of the Reserve Bank. So when something which is a liability is something that doesn't belong to you. For example, you go in as an individual, you're going to acquire a loan from a bank. The loan that you have acquired, you have taken money which is not yours. That loan becomes a liability to you or to you as a business. It's a liability. So basically, the definition that I'm giving in terms of a liability is something that doesn't belong to you. So these are the items that we are going to look at in the options. So if you look at A, currency in circulation, yes, currency in circulation does not belong to the central bank, so it's a liability. Does not belong to the central bank, so it becomes a liability. Then we go to the second one, which is loans to financial institutions. Then we go to the second one, which is loans to financial institutions. So when loans to financial institutions, what happens to loans to financial institutions is that these are loans to financial institutions come from the central bank. Central bank issues the loans to what? To the financial institutions. Financial institutions go and borrow money from the central bank. So the money belongs to the central bank. So they are assets to the central bank. They are not liabilities. So that one is out. That makes A out. Then B, you also have loans to financial institutions on B. So B is out again. We go to C. We have got securities and reserves. Securities belong to the central bank. Remember, central bank the central bank issues out these securities in a bid maybe to raise money. So they belong to the central bank. So these are not liabilities, but reserves are liabilities. Because the reserves, they are certain portion of balances of the financial institutions that are supposed to be held by the financial institutions that is designated by the central bank. This is actually an instrument that is used by the central bank to control money supply that is circulating in the what? In the economy. So the central bank might raise this proportion of reserves or reduce it depending on the direction that they want the money supply to move. So reserves become a liability to the central bank because the reserves, they are just balances that are there in the financial institutions, but these balances are not belong to the what? To the central bank. So the reserve is correct, but securities now is not correct. So we are left with D. D, we have got currency in circulation. Yes, currency in circulation, we are talking about the money that is changing hands in the economy, in the public. That is not something for the central bank. So it becomes a liability. And the reserves, again, are for the financial institutions, not the reserve bank. So D is the most appropriate there. Then we move on to the next one, which is 1.8. If you move to 1.8, 1.8 is saying reserves are equal to the sum of dash reserves. But basically, without wasting much time there, on reserve, we have what we call required reserves, and we have got what we call excess reserves. So where we have that option, it's on A, required reserves and excess reserves. Required reserves is determined by the requirement reserve ratio. The requirement reserve ratio, which is the the required reserve ratio. This is a ratio that is designated by the central bank. The one that I was trying to explain earlier, that it's set at a certain percentage, and it explains that a certain percentage of the deposits that is being made by the financial institutions should be held there and not issued out as loans. If they say 20% of all your deposits should not be issued out as loans and kept at that bank, they should just be kept there, not to be issued by as loans. So that becomes a required reserve. So this becomes an instruction that is coming from the central bank. And then we have got excess reserve. If a bank sees it's necessary maybe to keep a certain proportion above the required as reserves, the difference becomes excess. Let's say the central bank has set the reserve requirement ratio at 50%, and then a bank sees it necessary maybe to raise that ratio to 70 and keep 70% of its deposits. We are saying now 70 minus 50, you get 20, so 20% becomes the excess. So A is the most appropriate there. Then you go to 1.9. 1.9 reads the interest rate that the Reserve Bank charges banks that borrow from it is the dash rate. This is actually clear. This interest rate is called the repo rate. The discount or repo rate is the rate that is charged to banks by the central bank. Remember, the banks when they are in financial crisis go to the central bank to access funds. The same thing that the public do when they need money, they go to banks, but banks also might need money, so they go to the central bank. And when they go to central bank, they are charged what we call the repo rate. And when the public goes to the banks, they are charged the interest rate. So that's the scenario that we have there. So the repo rate becomes the most appropriate. Then we go to the next one, which is 1.10. If you go to 1.10, it reads when a bank sells a government bond to the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve becomes the central bank. Government bond to the Federal Reserve, reserves in the bank system dash and the monetary base dash, everything else is held constant. Right, here we have a scenario that when a bank sells a government bond. So what is happening here is the issue of government bonds acts in a way that it's an indirect way of borrowing money that is employed in the financial system. So when a bank sells a government bond, it means the, 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 the Federal Reserve is going to hold that government bond, and that bank is going to be given money. So what does it mean? It means the bank now will hold more money to issue out, and to issue out as loans. So when a bank holds more money, its potential to issue out money as loans will increase. So basically, what we are going to see is that the bank's reserves also will increase. The reserves basically are the money that the bank is holding. So we are going to see an increase in the reserves in the banking system. So here we've got an increase, and also basically when the reserves is increased, it means the monetary base also is what is increased. So we have an increase and an increase there being the most appropriate, and that answer is on D. So D becomes the most appropriate here. Then we go to the next one, which is 1.1 1.11. 1.11 is saying dash is not an element of inflation targeting. Basically, maybe we might start by understanding what we mean by inflation targeting. Inflation targeting is when an inflation rate is targeted in such a way that there's an inflation rate, inflation rate that is set that the economy wants to operate at. And when that inflation rate is set, for example, the central bank says that the inflation rate should be maybe at 6%. And then the central bank has to manipulate and adjust the monetary policy in such a way that the inflation rate does not deviate from 6%, but goes within 6%. So that's inflation targeting. So we are just setting an inflation rate as the central bank, and then we adjust the monetary policy so that we operate within that inflation rate. That is inflation targeting. So the question is saying dash is not an element of inflation targeting. So if you go through the responses that we have there, you would see that an institutional commitment to price stability as the primary long run becomes an element of inflation targeting. Then you increase the accountability of the central bank for attaining its inflation objectives. It's also an element. Then a public announcement of mid-term numerical targets for inflation also is appropriate as an element of inflation targeting. Then the last one, we've got the information inclusive approach, in which only monetary aggregates are used in making decisions about monetary policy. So this one cannot be appropriate, because this one is actually limiting only in the context of only monetary aggregates. So that cannot be practical, which makes D is not an element, because it's only confining to only monetary aggregates. So D becomes not an element there. So D is our answer on 1.11. Then we try to move on to the next one. I think this one is the last one on this page. We go to the next one now. Right. If you go to 1.12, it's reading a primary reason why nations conduct international trade is that international trade is whereby different countries exchange goods differences. So the question is saying a primary reason why nations conduct international trade is that. So the reason why different countries exchange goods and services is the one that is being asked there. So if you look at the first one, some nations prefer to conduct certain products, to produce certain products, while other nations produce other products. This we might let's look at the other responses that we have. Resources are not equally distributed to all trading nations. Yes, this one is also very appropriate. That why we engage in the international trade is because some countries have certain resources that we do not have as a country. So by international trade, we are accessing our resources from other countries. So this one is more appropriate. And then you go to see trade enhances opportunity. to accumulate profits. This is not the primary reason why we engage in the international trade. Of course, the issue of accumulation of profits might be a reason, but not a primary reason. Then we go to D, interest rates are not identical in all trading nations. This is not the main reason why we engage in the international trade. If you look at B, B becomes the most appropriate. Resources are not equally distributed to all trading nations. So B becomes the most appropriate there. Then we go to 1.13. A main advantage of specialization results from specialization on its own is the production of a limited range of products and services. Production of a limited range or a limited range of products and services maybe due to the reasons that maybe we are best in producing those products. So we specialize in certain limited range of products. So what is the advantage of doing that now? Let's try to look there. Economics of large scale production. It is very correct, because when we specialize on what we are best on, it means we are going to produce more, and the other country specializes in what it is based on. So we are going to see a large scale production that is appropriate. Let's go to B. The specializing country behaving as a monopoly. There is no issue of monopolizing, which is incorrect. Then you go to C. Basically, monopolizing is not a good element in the in the business world. So we cannot take B. Then you go to C. Smaller production runs with lower unit costs, which is very wrong. Lower unit costs are associated with large productions. Then you go to D. High wages paid to foreign workers. When we have such a scenario, it cannot be an advantage, but it can come as a disadvantage. So obviously we are left with A. So A is the most appropriate there. Then we go to the next one. Let's try to see the next one that we have. Right, 1.14 is saying international trade in goods and services is not used as a substitute for. International trade in goods and services is not used as a substitute for. A, international movement of capital. International movement of capital, it is used for that. It is used for that. So A is not correct. International movement of labor, it is used for that. When we have international trade, we have the international movement of labor and capital also. See, international movement of technology, we have seen it. There's international movement of technology. We enjoy technology that we do not have in our country through international trade, which is not correct. D, domestic production of different goods and services. The question is saying international trade in goods and services is not used as a substitute for. It is not used as a substitute of domestic production of different goods and services. That is not the main motive of international trade, to replace domestic production of goods and services. So D is the answer there. So we can represent D there for the answer for 1.14. Then we go to the next one, which is 1.15. If you go to 1.15, it's reading, if a nation is an open economy, it means that the nation, when we have an open economy, it means that this economy is interacting with other economies. So let's look at the most appropriate there. A is saying it means that the nation allows private ownership of capital, which is not correct, because as long as now it's now interacting with other nations, there's no private ownership of capital. Then we've got there is a flexible exchange rate. If it means that the nation is a flexible exchange rate, which is not correct. Yes, fixed exchange rates, which is not appropriate there. Then we go to conduct trade with other countries. That is very correct, because we are saying this economy is interacting with other countries, so it's conducting trade with other countries. So that's the basic in terms of an open economy. So this one becomes the most appropriate there. Then we go to 1.16. If you go to 1.16, it reads International trade forces domestic firms to become more competitive in terms of the introduction of new products, which is correct, because when we engage in international trade, we are going to access new products from other nations, product design and quality, which is correct. We are going to access that through international trade, product price, which is correct. So you will see that D is the most appropriate there, or the above mentioned. So we indicate D there as the answer. Then we try to look at the next one. Right. The next question is saying the movement of free international trade is most likely to generate short-term unemployment in the movement of free international trade is most likely to generate short-term unemployment, because when there is international trade, it means the domestic firms are going to face international competition. And when they face international competition, this might not work in a positive way for these domestic industries, because they are facing competition, sales are going to go down, even the competitiveness of their products might not stand the international competition. So that's the scenario that we have, and it might lead to short-term unemployment. So the question is saying the movement to free international trade is most likely to generate short-term unemployment in 1A, industries in which there are neither imports nor exports, not correct. Importing, competing industries are not correct. Then C, industries that sell to domestic and foreign buyers, not correct. Industries that only sell to foreign buyers, not correct. Right, let's look at A again. Industries in which there are neither imports nor exports, not correct. B, import competing industry. Yes, this one will affect, this will be affected by unemployment. The import competing industries. These one are the industries that are competing with foreign industries, so they will be affected. So B becomes the most appropriate. So here we have got B. Then we try to see if we have got another question beneath that. Right, 1.18, we've got international trade is based on the idea that exports should exceed imports. That is on 1.18. Yes, exports should exceed imports. That's correct. Let's try to look at the most appropriate that we have there, because when exports exceed imports, it means we are going to have a positive trade balance, which is a very healthy position. But let's look at the other responses. Imports should exceed exports, which is wrong. Resources are more mobile internationally than goods. Resources are more mobile internationally than goods, no, which is incorrect. We cannot have a scenario of our resources being more mobile going out of the country. When resources go out of the country, it means our production capacity is being contracted or reduced, which is not a good position. So C is not correct. Resources are less mobile international than goods. Resources are less mobile international than goods. So D also is correct. So you compare D with A now. We do see that the most appropriate is D, because resources becomes one of the primary requirements in the production process. So we would want them not to be more mobile, not to go out of the country on a large scale. So D becomes the most appropriate. So we go to the next one. I think we are going to the next page now. We go to 1.19. 1.19 says arguments for free trade are sometimes disregarded by politicians because this becomes we are looking for a disadvantage now of free trade. Obviously, we can always reevaluate the scenario of free trade that we might come up. We have to come up some of the disadvantages or arguments that we can put across against the issue of free trade. So let's look at the disadvantage that we have from the options that we are having there. So we are on 1.19. Maximizing domestic efficiency is not considered important. Maximizing domestic efficiency is not considered important. Usually, it is considered to a certain extent when we are engaging in free trade. Domestic production is always key. So we can leave A. B. Maximizing consumer welfare may not be a chief priority. Consumer welfare usually here is not considered. This one is appropriate. Consumer welfare, we are talking about even the price levels that the consumers are going to go through. They are going to buy goods and services from outside the country. We have got exchange rate differentials that are there between the currency of our country and the currency of the country that we're importing from. We might have expensive products, which is going to compromise the consumer welfare. So B becomes appropriate there. Let's look at C. There are good economic reasons for keeping an economic isolated, which is not correct. Economists tend to favor highly protected domestic markets, which is not correct. So B becomes the most appropriate there. Then we go to 1.20. Increased foreign competition tends to increased foreign competition tends to. Let's look at the options that we have there. And A is saying intensify inflationary pressure at home. B is saying induce falling output per worker hour for domestic workers. C, place constraints on the wages of domestic workers. D, increase profits of domestic import competing industries. So you would see that C becomes the most appropriate there. Place constraints on the wages of domestic workers, because when there's when there's increased foreign competition, it means that we are saying these workers are also buying products from outside the country. In the event that these products are also are more expensive, their wages value are going to be eroded. So we have some constraints that are there. So that C becomes the most appropriate there. So let's get C there. Then 1.21, Dash is not one of the major trading partners of South Africa. Let's look at all the options that we have there. We've got United States of America, China, South Korea, Angola. Angola becomes an African country, which makes it a trading partner. United States is also a trading partner. China, we've seen that China is also a trading partner of South Africa. So South Korea becomes the most appropriate there, which is not one of the major trading partners of South Africa. So South Korea here. Then we go to 1.2.2. International trade in goods and services change to. Let's see the options that we have there. A is saying increase all domestic costs and prices. B, keep all domestic costs and prices at the same level. C, lessen the amount of competition facing home manufacturers. D, increase the amount of competition facing home manufacturers. D is the most appropriate there. When there's international trade, competition for domestic manufacturers also increase. So D, increase the amount of competition facing home manufacturers. So here D is most appropriate. Then we go to the next one, 1.23. When you go to 1.23, it's saying the real income of domestic producers and consumers can be increased by real income of domestic producers and consumers can be increased by A, saying technological progress, but not by international trade. Yes, it can be increased by technological progress, and also international trade is applicable. So A becomes not appropriate because it's not including international trade there. Then B, international trade, but not by technological progress, which is not true again. Technological progress and international trade. So C is the most appropriate there. Then D is even saying neither technological progress nor or international trade. So it's disregarding all of them. So C is most appropriate. Then you go to 1.2.4. 1.2.4 is saying the most recent wave of globalization, which began in the 1980s, is emphasized the outsourcing of. Outsourcing is the movement out of what. So this is what we want to look at. A, services and white collar jobs. So white collar jobs are those jobs that are office working jobs, administrative jobs. They are white collar jobs. Services and white collar jobs, we have seen that happening due to globalization. Globalization actually also explains the exchange of goods and services worldwide. Globally means worldwide. So we have seen that happening. Services are being exchanged due to the wave of globalization. And also the white collar jobs, we have seen professionals moving out of the country, going to other countries. So service and white collar jobs is appropriate there. Then you look at the other options. You would see that the issue of blue collar jobs, there's no much movement of blue collar jobs. Blue collar jobs describes physical jobs that are not office work jobs or administrative work jobs. So B is not appropriate there. Natural resource extraction, not appropriate. Agriculture and farming, not appropriate. These are not mainly associated with white collar jobs. So A becomes the most appropriate. Then we go to the next one, which is the last one. Is saying, should international transportation costs decrease, the effect on international trade would include A. When the international transportation costs decrease, it means there is now an easy movement of goods and services between international boundaries. So they are saying the effect on international trade would include A dash or N dash. A, increase in the volume of trade. Increase in the volume of trade is correct because we are saying when it's now easy for these goods to move from one nation to the other, we obviously notice an increase in the volume of trade. Then B saying a smaller gain from trade not correct. Decline in the income of home producers, not correct. Decrease in the level of specialization in production, not correct. So A, it becomes the most appropriate there. So A is the most appropriate. So we have 25 questions that we have there. Each question carries 2 marks. And here is stated here, and total for this 25 marks is 50 marks. So that is what we have, guys, on this paper from June 2023. It's on question 1, and the question 1 was on multiple choice. So thank you for listening. Keep in touch for more videos to come as we prepare for exams. Those who haven't subscribed, please subscribe. More videos are going to come as we go through Economics N5. With that, guys, I am out.